A teacher was talking to a class of little boys about the presence of God in daily life. He asked them if God is everywhere, and they correctly answered, yes. In an effort to get the matter closer to their own personal living, he named some actual situations. Is God in the church? Yes. Is God in your home? Yes. Is God on the street? Yes. Is God in the city prison? Silence. That made them think. Finally, one of the boys came up with as good an answer as he could think of. Yes, God is there, but those fellows don't know it. Now, isn't that the problem with the guy in the gospel this morning? God was in his life, but he did not know it. God was in his fruits. God was in his fields. God was in his goods. God was everywhere except in his gratitude. And I think it's kind of interesting that Jesus did not portray this guy as some monster. The rich farmer was not described as some sinful person. He didn't steal or cheat his laborers. He happened to have a good growing season, and he grew rich from it. This guy seems to me to have been honest, hardworking, and smart, but not fully smart enough to grasp reality. He had set himself up for many years of leisure and prosperity, but in one day, someone else would end up enjoying it all, because Jesus said, this night, the man's soul would be required of him. The man was rich in material things, but poor in the most important things of all, his relationship with God and with others. The rich man's response to his bountiful harvest is very telling. He said, I shall say to myself, now, as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry. Where's the gratitude to God? Where is the concern for anyone else? His statement is all about himself and his own hedonism. I think St. Paul has the correct response, as we heard him tell the Colossians in our second reading. He said, think of what is above, not of what is on earth. Now, this is not to say that we are not expected or encouraged to earn a good living. God gave us a brain. He gave us talents. He gives us strength and energy. And he expects us to use the gifts he's given us to provide for ourselves and our loved ones. There is nothing sinful about reaping material rewards from hard work or wise investments. But it is sinful if the material rewards begin to own you instead of you owning them. You know, it reminds me of an image of hell that I once read that really stuck with me. Hell was portrayed as this huge banquet with the most sumptuous food you can imagine set before all the people there. The problem was that the people were separated from the food by a giant chasm that they were unable to cross to get to the food. But everyone was given very long forks to reach the food. And people were using those forks to get the food. But the forks were too long for them to turn around and get them back into their own mouths. They couldn't successfully feed themselves. But the saddest part of the image is that they all could have as much food as they wanted if they would just offer to feed one another instead of only trying to feed themselves. It's not a perfect image, but I think it makes a good point about the foolish farmer in the parable. I think what Jesus is really trying to teach us in this parable is that what we really counts for us when we die is not the wealth we acquired during life, but the person we become in the process of living. Let me say that again. What really counts when we die is not the wealth we acquired during life, but the person we became in the process of living. You know, our priority in life should be on becoming a person, a virtuous person, not on acquiring wealth. Again, St. Paul says it so well in our second reading. He says, "Put to death, then, the parts of you that are earthly: immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and the greed that is idolatry." You see, if we don't put these things to death in ourselves, as St. Paul tells us, then we would be living up to what we heard in the first reading. Vanity of vanities, all things are vanity. You see, the whole point of this parable is to see the foolishness of putting our trust in accumulating material goods or personal attributes to ensure we have a comfortable life on earth, while at the same time forgetting the goods of the soul, which are what we really will ensure us eternal life through God's mercy. St. Athanasius says, "A person who lives as if he were to die every day will not sin, whereas he who thinks he has a long life ahead of him, he will easily let himself be dominated by pleasures." That's something to think about if we are serious about our souls and the person we become in the process of living. Think about this. Today, we have higher buildings and wider highways, but shorter tempers and narrower points of view. We have bigger houses, but smaller families. We spend more, but enjoy less. We have multiplied our possessions, but reduced our values. We have finer houses, but more broken homes. We have increased our possessions, but we have reduced our values. Many have higher incomes, but lower morals. We have more quantity, but we're short on quality. We've learned to make a living, but we don't know how to live. I've come to realize that the greatest wealth I have acquired is working to make sure my soul is ready to meet God, because that's really what living is all about.